All right, Suki, I can see your face. Can you see this PowerPoint slide deck? Yes? Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna have to minimize all this stuff. Guys, I'm kind of disappointed because this definitely feels like a webinar right now, but bear with me. I promise it's not gonna be like that the whole way through. In fact, I really don't like webinars because they aren't as interactive, because that's where the real learning happens. So Suki and I talked a little bit about ourselves. There are details. Definitely hit us up if we can be of help. And today we're going to talk a little bit about rethinking negotiation, what that means, what the word paymentum means. It's a word I made up, but it's really important. It's about momentum around being paid and being paid appropriately. We're going to talk about business realities and how that might affect your rate or your pricing structure. 5 tactics to help you have credible conversations on raising your rates. And then we're going to go into the game part, which I'm really excited about. Hopefully you thought a little bit about your rates and your pricing and how you might have to shift it. And we're actually going to get a chance to interact with someone else in the Azlo community to practice that conversation. And then we're going to debrief it, and then we'll have a few questions and answers. So what is negotiation? Like I said, I'm a negotiation nerd. I've been writing about it for probably 4 or 5 years and training about it for 10. I like to think of it as a full body experience. It's not like learning Excel, right? Like Excel is a skill. Maybe you learned, someone taught you how to use VLOOKUP, totally changed your life, right? But that command is easily typed in and then you know how to do it, right? The issue is that when it comes to negotiation, it has a lot to do with not only your ability to execute the right tactic or the right technique, but it is also about the fact that there's an adrenaline dump and there's all these things that happen physiologically as you're going through the negotiation. And the interesting thing is that excitement or anxiety manifests the same way in the body. It causes cortisol to be produced. It causes adrenaline to happen. And there's this thing called the adrenaline dump. And it does this thing, it shuts down your higher order cognitive skills. So that's why when you go into a high stakes or even a low stakes negotiation, you might be forgetful. You might forget what your plan is. Because your body's been put into survival mode. And so what's interesting around this is that it actually is not so much about acquiring a skill as much as it's changing your behavior. And what's cool about that is that you can train yourself to be better at remembering those best strategies and tactics and help you get more of what you need. Negotiation to me as well is a lot about relationship building. It's not so much about taking from someone else as it is about joint problem solving. And like we mentioned before, authentic confidence is one of those great byproducts, because if you're a good negotiator, you know what you need and you know what the situation really might need. And so that is something that is super exciting about really deepening your negotiation technique. And it really also is something that is mastered through practice, which is why I put this incredibly shiny and cheesy picture of a skier here, is because sometimes negotiation feels like you're skiing, it's like a high endurance, sort of high impact sport. So paymentum, a word I completely made up, but it's really important. Paymentum is momentum that you create around being paid appropriately for your time or your goods or your services. And it's about creating meaningful collaboration, mutual problem solving, and benefit between you and your customer. When you charge appropriately, you are igniting a process of transformation for your customer and for whomever it is that your customers serve. And that is a really big deal. For a long time, I did a lot of work with sort of helper professions. So for a period of time, I was really popular amongst Austin acupuncturists for some reason on negotiation training, because they constantly have to negotiate their rates. A lot of these folks that come, into that type of industry, they really want to help people and they hate charging more because they feel like somehow that's not doing a benefit to their client. And so that's kind of what inspired me making up this whole idea of paymentum, is that it really isn't about you. You're not taking something from your client, right? If you're trying to get someone to start something, to ignite a process of transformation, it has to be valued appropriately. And so one way to sort of reframe this, if you're the type of person and small business owner where you're like, oh, I don't want to raise my rates because it'll be bad for the customer or the client, the consumer, that's not the right way to think about it. You've got to think about it as, am I charging enough that it causes this person to have enough skin in the game that it ignites their process of transformation? I think when you're dealing with products, it's a little bit more straightforward because that's more about materials and time. And so that calculation is a little bit more clear. And then the other piece of it too is just market valuation. Like, what are other people in your market charging? So there are rates that I can get here in Austin, Texas, or in the South that are very different from the rates that I can charge and get very easily, say in the coast, or if I go to New York City or Los Angeles or Seattle. So those are some of the things to think about. But I think the most important thing to think about is, how do we create paymentum? How do we create momentum around what we're doing, right? And then I think the other thing to consider too is, what is your business reality? So I looked at a couple of different, publications, and what I saw was, if you wanted to maintain the operations of your business, you really need to be increasing 5 to 20% of what you're charging, whether it's rates or prices, over the course of a year. If you want to grow your operations, though, you really do have to make a jump. You have to go from, increase your rates by 21 to 50%. And it can be scary. It can be scary to increase your rates by 20% or 50%. 50% is a lot. But again, if your business reality is you want to keep growing, you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to stretch. So how do we have these conversations, right? I'm sure you're asking, like, Tanya, okay, fine, I should increase my rates by 50%, but like, I don't know how to do that. I'm going to lose all my clients. This is bananas. Well, it can be a little bit intimidating, but it doesn't have to be scary. And so here are 5 tactics that I found are really helpful when you're having that conversation with your existing client, right? So this is existing clients, right? If you have a new client, they're not going to know that you did a 50% increase. So don't even worry about it. But I think the first thing that I would suggest is, you want to make sure you're communicating with fairness. And that means using, like we mentioned before, market value and things of that nature to really anchor the price that you're putting out there, right? You don't want it to seem arbitrary. I think when people feel like things are arbitrary is when they feel like it's unfair. And so being able to say, we're trying to expand our operations, the cost of materials went up, whatever the case may be, but letting people know, going forward, we're going to be changing our pricing structure because of these reasons. The other thing that I like to suggest people do is create an encore program. So, I think of it, I made up this phrase, and it's just, I call it client shed, right? Because I write for a publication, I'm part of an international firm, and then I do take some private executive coaching clients. And so I know the anxiety around raising your rates, and then the issue of like client shed, right? You're going to lose people because you're charging too much. And so sometimes you can create what I would call an encore program that will allow them a little bit of time to kind of get used to the fact that in the next quarter, you're changing your rate structure or something like that. And I also would suggest that you put a deadline on that too. So letting them know, I really value you as a customer. We've been working together for the last 2 years. Our company is growing. And we are going to be changing our rates and raising our rates in the next quarter. But because we value you so much as a client, we do want to we want to make this easy for you. So for the next quarter, even though our prices are going up, for the next quarter, we'll accept you and we can work together at the previous rate. But in the quarter after that, we're going to have to go to the new rate. So that's one way of doing things. The other thing you almost want to do simultaneously is you want to develop and offer a new program with new pricing. And offering a new program with new pricing is another way of just completely reframing the entire situation, right? You're reframing, you're repositioning, and that new pricing is a part of that. And so that can be an easy way to ease that transition or have that conversation. The fourth thing is you want to, now this can be something where maybe you're bringing on junior staff. And so you can refer that person to a more junior staffer who has a lower price. Or if you've got customers that you want to not leave them kind of, out in the cold, you might find someone else, in fact, even a rival, or someone, in your space that charges a lower rate, and you can help them, make a referral there. And in that case, you are kind of reconciling yourself with the fact you're losing a client, but at least you're taking care of that client, and making sure that they have what they need. And then the last thing is amplify revenue generating activities, which means what, right? Revenue generating means more marketing, more doing client acquisition, just going out there and really doing sales. I think there's a phrase that says sales heals all wounds. And it's just a reality as small business owners. We have to be constantly thinking about, how are we spending our time and how are we spending it towards things like revenue generating activities? Because ultimately, if we want to grow, or even if we want to maintain, we are going to possibly lose some clients, and we're going to have to just find some new ones. So these are things to keep in mind as you're having your raising your rates consideration. Okay, so we are going to do the game in a few minutes here.
I'm just going to hop on here really fast and say,
Yeah.
if you need to leave because you've lost power, something's going on because you're in that hurricane area,
Oh man.
just go.
Yeah.
Just go. It'll be okay if you leave. If you gotta go, you gotta go. We'd rather you go than say, oh yeah, I stopped to negotiate with a storm.
Yeah,
So
you can't really, those are the things you cannot negotiate with.
yeah,
Okay.
just go.
So I am going to share a file, a PDF right now. It's the Raise Your Rates Planner. And I just dropped it into the chat window, and hopefully folks can grab that because I kind of mapped out a few things that we've just talked about. And I want to give everyone just a few minutes to think about that because what we're going to do here in a moment in our game, which I'm very excited to do, is we are going to, it's going to automatically pair you with someone in this room. And so if you have the ability to be up on your camera, I strongly suggest you do, because that is really helpful for any negotiation. But it also is really helpful for your partner. So here's how the game works. You're going to think about what you're charging right now, right? What your rate is or what your pricing is. And what I want you to do is write down, what would it cost? What would the new cost be at 20%? And what would the new cost be at 50%? And the point of this exercise of pairing up with a stranger and having this conversation is you are forcing your body to have that adrenaline dump, right? You're causing your body to experience what you might feel like when you're talking to a client. And that is the therapeutic and educational value of what we're about to do. It's literally training your mental muscle, just like you would train a physical muscle if you were working out. And that is the way to get towards excellence. That is the only way, in fact, to get better as a negotiator. So write those two numbers down. And what I want folks to do when we pair everyone up and put you into a breakout room is think about your best or your worst client. What would a 20% increase look like? What would a 50% increase look like? If you want to ask for more, 75%, 100%, do it, go for it. But the point is that we're going to pair up. And so partner one is going to ask first. Partner two is going to pretend and sort of channel the energy of a client, right? And the conversation you're going to have is partner one is having this conversation with partner two about how they're going to raise their rates. And partner two, I want you to react like a client would, right? And partner one's going to have to explain a little bit in that conversation, even though it's a continuing, it's a previous client, but partner one, kind of explain what it is that you and the client do together and all of those different things that you might have in that conversation. Partner two, I want you to improvise and react to it. And maybe you're going to be your best client to partner one. Maybe you're going to be your nightmare client to partner one. Go for it, whatever it is that you want to do in that acting scenario. But keep in mind, after that session is done, we're going to switch. So partner one is going to be your client, and you're going to practice it the other way, right? So keep that in mind. Be kind, but also, challenge your partner a little bit. And then what we're going to do, and so I see Nate asked, what if we charge different rates depending on the service? So I want you to go for practicing the thing that you either have the most trouble with or the thing that you want to be most perfect on. Make sense? And so just focus down on that one conversation, right? This is really, we're stripping it all the way down to really that pricing ask. And so what we're going to do is everyone's going to be assigned partner one and partner two. That first round, you're going to have 4 minutes. And I can send a little message out, which I will, that will say clock started. And then I'll say time's up for the first round. And then take a second, take a beat, and then we're going to switch roles. Partner two is going to ask partner one, right? We're going to have that conversation. And then after 4 minutes, everyone is going to come back in and we're going to debrief it. Sound good?